Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a military grappling with, well, two huge challenges,
Hmm.
a critical shortage of people and the staggering human toll of modern war. Now, picture them turning to artificial intelligence, AI, as a potential solution. But what if that solution doesn't just change the battlefield? What if it profoundly reshapes military service itself, creating entirely new demands and maybe even surprising psychological burdens?
Yeah, what's really fascinating here is how these two things, the strategic push for AI and the deep personal struggles of veterans, are actually deeply intertwined. Today, we're taking a deep dive into two compelling sets of sources to explore how Western militaries are navigating these pressures and what it means for the actual human beings who serve, both now and, in the future.
Right. Our mission is to understand this complex intersection, how AI is changing recruitment, force structure, even sparking debate about conscription again. And then we'll connect all that to the very real, often unseen struggles our veterans face, drawing on a detailed report about the Canadian veteran experience. It's really a story of innovation, human cost, and a profound shift in what it means to serve. So why are militaries so focused on AI right now? It's not just like a tech fad.
Yeah, well, not at
It's
all.
actually a direct response to two foundational interlocking crises that have really defined the post-9/11 era.
Yep.
The first one, the immense human cost of these long wars. Iraq, Afghanistan, they've left a deep legacy, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It goes far beyond the immediate casualties. These prolonged conflicts, often with guerrilla tactics, ambiguous situations, they've inflicted deep, lasting wounds. The psychological fallout is severe. We see high rates of PTSD. Some studies say up to 23% for Iraq and Afghanistan vets.
23%, wow.
Yeah. And it's not just PTSD in isolation. It often cascades,
Yeah.
leading to depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and tragically, a higher suicide risk. It's this complex, tangled web. And beyond those diagnoses, there's this concept of moral injury.
Right, I've heard that term.
Yeah.
It's different from PTSD.
Exactly. It's a deeper wound. Psychological, social, spiritual harm from violating your own moral code. Maybe killing non-combatants, seeing atrocities, or feeling betrayed by leadership. Like the Afghanistan withdrawal for many, that felt like a mass moral injury event.
Mm.
A sense that their sacrifices were maybe meaningless.
Mhm.
It shows up as guilt, shame, anger, a real loss of meaning. It's heavy stuff. And then there's the physical toll. It's just as significant. Veterans from these conflicts, much higher rates of chronic conditions.
Like what specifically?
Well, Canadian data shows about 30% live as chronic pain. That's way higher than civilians. Lots of back problems, arthritis too. But here's the crucial part, the comorbidity, how
Yeah.
these things overlap. A staggering 95% of veterans with a diagnosed mental health condition also have a chronic physical condition.
95%.
Yeah. It creates this incredibly complex long-term burden. They compound each other.
So you have this immense human cost, and layered on top of that, there's a second, equally pressing crisis. Personnel shortfalls. Big ones.
Huge. Across Western nations, the all-volunteer force model, it's under serious strain, struggling to get people in, struggling to keep them.
Could you give us some numbers?
Sure. The U.S. Army, for example, faced a 15,000 soldier shortfall in fiscal 23. That's their biggest gap since like 1973.
Wow.
And the active duty force has shrunk by almost 40% since 1980.
40%.
Yeah. In Canada, the armed forces are short maybe 14,000 to 16,000 members. Attrition is high, especially new recruits leaving because of training delays. It cancels out recruitment gains.
In the UK?
Similar story. Thousands below target strength, net loss of personnel year over year. The trend is clear. Western militaries are shrinking when they feel they need to be growing.
And why is this happening? It sounds complicated.
It is. Multiple factors. The pool of eligible young people is shrinking. In the U.S., only about 23% meet the requirements without needing a waiver.
Just 23%.
Yeah. Then you've got a hot civilian job market pulling people away, declining public trust in institutions, including the military, and this widening civil-military gap. Fewer young people even know someone who served.
Right.
And this creates a really damaging sort of self-reinforcing cycle.
How so?
Well, the visible human cost of war, maybe amplified by media focus on trauma, lowers public confidence. That shrinks the recruitment pool. Then the personnel shortages put more strain on those still serving. Longer deployments, more frequent deployments.
Exposing them to the very stressors that cause the injuries in the first place.
Exactly. It's this corrosive feedback loop, which raises a big question. How do militaries break out of this?
So their answer, or at least a big part of it, is this pivot towards AI and autonomous systems.
That's the strategic response, yeah. It's all about getting decision advantage, sensing, deciding, acting faster than the adversary. overwhelming them with tempo.
And we're seeing major initiatives, right?
Absolutely. Look at the U.S. Replicator Initiative, launched in 2023.
Okay, what's that?
The goal is to field thousands of what they call all-domain, attritable autonomous systems, ADA2s, by August 2025.
Or tradable, meaning disposable.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Low-cost, AI-powered systems for land, sea, air, cyber, lots of them, deployed quickly to counter sheer numbers like maybe China's military. It's about speed and using commercial tech.
And Canada and the UK.
Canada's aiming to be fully AI-enabled by 2030, emphasizing ethical AI. The UK wants to be a world leader, focusing on human-machine teaming to boost human capabilities.
So practically, what does this look like on the ground or, in the air or sea?
Well, it means AI and robots taking over tasks that are, quote, dull, dirty, and dangerous.
Okay, example.
Think autonomous logistics. AI predicting supply needs using unmanned vehicles or drones for resupply in risky areas.
Makes sense.
Unmanned reconnaissance UAVs doing surveillance without risking pilots. Autonomous medical evacuation drones potentially pulling wounded soldiers out of hot zones. Wow.
And then there are lethal autonomous weapon systems, laws, that's a whole spectrum. From human in the loop, where someone confirms the shot, to potentially human out of the loop. Things like the Switchblade 600 loitering munition are already out there. But there's a real worry here, this doctrine-technology gap.
Meaning?
Meaning the tech is developing way faster than our rules and understanding for how to use it responsibly. Replicator works on, 18-month timelines, international talks on law levies at the UN, moving incredibly slowly.
So the capabilities are being fielded before we fully figured out the ethics and the operational concepts.
Exactly. That's a significant gap.
Okay, so the big selling point is that AI will reduce harm, take soldiers out of the line of fire. But you mentioned a paradox earlier. Could it introduce new kinds of harm?
It really could. It's a profound paradox. Less physical risk, maybe, but potentially new psychological risks.
Like moral injury?
Yes, potentially novel forms of it. There's talk of a responsibility gap. An operator feels responsible for what a machine does, even if the AI's decision process is like a black box. I see.
Or automation bias, just trusting the machine too much, which can weaken your own moral judgment. Imagine supervising a system that kills people, even remotely. That constant exposure, that distance. It can erode ethical boundaries, create this deep internal conflict.
The cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. A clash between seeing yourself as a virtuous warrior and being essentially a remote supervisor for lethal algorithms. The burden shifts maybe to the moral strain of being complicit in automated killing.
So, if the nature of warfare is changing like this, what does it mean for the type of soldier needed? It sounds like less about physical toughness and more about tech skills.
That's a key shift. The future seems to be about human-machine teaming. Co-intelligence.
Co-intelligence, I like that.
Yeah. The U.S. Army's already creating new jobs like MOS 49B for AI and machine learning. They're even directly commissioning civilian tech experts as officers.
So what roles were we talking about?
Data scientists, software developers, network engineers, robotics specialists, AI ethicists even.
Wow, AI ethicists in uniform.
Absolutely. Think about it. An infantry squad leader might become a human-machine team leader, a convoy driver, maybe an autonomous logistics coordinator. It's about humans doing the critical thinking, the ethical oversight that AI lacks. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the military is now competing head-to-head with Silicon Valley for this talent.
Right. That sounds like a tough competition.
It's fierce. There's already a massive global shortage of STEM talent. Millions of jobs unfilled. And then there's the pay gap. Private tech offers huge starting salaries, stock options, benefits. The military's rigid pay scales just can't compete. Enlistment bonuses. Often not enough for these skills.
Plus, the cultures must be wildly different.
Totally. Military,
Right.
hierarchical, collectivist. Tech world, often individualistic, anti-authoritarian. It's a mismatch. And military marketing, it's often still focused on combat, adventure, not necessarily appealing to someone motivated by cutting-edge tech challenges. They've been slow to adapt, using things like esports teams or high-tech marketing.
Okay, so if the warfighter is being redefined and there's this talent war, what does that mean for conscription? For the whole idea of who serves? Does the draft become irrelevant or maybe even more critical in a weird way?
It definitely changes the calculation. AI warfare, with this idea of attritable mass, lots of cheap autonomous systems, might suggest you need fewer human soldiers overall.
Okay, so maybe no need for a mass draft.
Possibly. But It creates this critical vulnerability. The military becomes incredibly dependent on a small group of technical
Ah,
experts.
the AI specialists, the programmer.
Exactly. Losing just a few of them could cripple key capabilities. It makes the force, in a way, more brittle.
And it's not cheaper, is it?
No way. AI defense isn't cheap. It just shifts spending from personnel to
Right.
technology. Billions. Think Canada's drone program at $2.5 billion, the U.S. Replicator Initiative. It's massive investment in tech.
So fewer people needed overall, maybe, but those few tech people become absolutely essential. What does the public think about compulsory service now? Is there any appetite for bringing back the draft?
Not really, no. Polling across Western countries shows very low appetite. In Canada, a recent study found only 43% of young adults would even consider volunteering for combat.
Less than half.
Yeah. In the UK, young people strongly oppose national service. In the US, a draft is basically seen as political suicide.
Less so low.
Partly that widening civil-military divide we talked about, less than 1% of the US population serves. That shared sense of sacrifice needed for a universal draft, it's largely gone. So strategically, the pivot to AI makes a traditional mass mobilization draft seem less likely. The goal is tech over personnel.
But you mentioned that vulnerability,
Yeah.
the dependence on those few tech experts.
Right, and that creates this new kind of unsettling possibility.
Which is,
What happens if the military can't recruit or retain those crucial AI experts? Their whole strategy could fail. So in a national emergency,
oh,
you might see calls not for a mass draft, but for something targeted, a tech draft.
a tech draft, like drafting software engineers from Google.
It sounds wild, but imagine the logic. Drafting a few hundred key specialists might seem more politically acceptable than conscripting hundreds of thousands broadly. The specter of conscription in the AI age isn't mass armies. It's securing niche, critical human capital. It's unsettling.
Wow. Okay, so we've sketched out this future AI tech specialist, maybe even tech drafts. But while we're looking ahead, it's crucial we ground ourselves in the present, right?
Huh.
And really understand the experiences of those serving now and those who've already served. Which brings us to the reality of being a veteran, and we're going to look closely at the Canadian experience here.
Absolutely. Canada has this deep respect for veterans, culturally. But the sources show this real tension, a duality between their service and how they're perceived and how they transition. And to get the challenges, you first have to grasp the sheer scale of their contributions. World War I. Over 650,000 served from a tiny population. 1 in 10 didn't come back. Vimy Ridge. It forged the nation. World War II, over 1 million served globally. They were central in establishing human rights norms afterwards. Then there's peacekeeping. Over 125,000 CF members served in UN or NATO ops, but peacekeeping isn't always peaceful.
Right, it can be dangerous.
Very. Think the Battle of Medak Pocket in Croatia in 1993. Intense combat, plus humanitarian aid, disaster relief, and critical service here at home, assisting police, search and rescue, responding to floods, wildfires. And think about the COVID pandemic.
Oh yeah, the military was crucial there.
Deployed to long-term care homes, remote communities, vaccine rollout. Incredibly stressful, emotionally taxing work, far from any battlefield.
That's such an important point. Public perception often focuses on like World War history or gentle peacekeeping. But the reality for modern soldiers involves combat, morally complex missions, high-stress domestic stuff.
Exactly. And that disconnect really contributes to the cultural gap veterans feel when they come home. It complicates everything about their transition. And that transition, it's a huge life event, often jarring. About a third of veterans report a difficult adjustment. It hits their identity, social life, finances, sense of purpose.
And identity is a big one, right?
It's the biggest predictor, according to the data. Losing that military identity makes a difficult transition over 5 times more likely. Veterans talk about feeling adrift. Not soldiers anymore, but not quite civilian either.
That cultural gap again. Military structure versus civilian individualism.
Yeah, and losing that camaraderie, those intense bonds, it's a huge source of distress. Loneliness, longing for shared purpose.
And what about practical things like jobs and money?
Also major challenges. Financial preparedness is the second biggest factor linked to a tough transition. Worries about pensions, especially if they're released unexpectedly for medical reasons, that's a huge stressor.
And finding work is structure, purpose.
Absolutely. But veterans face hurdles, translating military skills leadership, problem solving into civilian language,
Right.
overcoming jargon, competing with younger people. There are support programs, but the challenges persist, suggesting maybe they aren't enough or not easy to access. And adding to all this stress, Bureaucracy.
Wow, the paperwork.
Constantly. Veterans report deep frustration with navigating the system's Department of National Defense, Veterans Affairs Canada, paperwork, delays, finding information, accessing services like healthcare, just finding a family doctor. It's a recurring nightmare for many.
The fact that there's an Office of the Veterans Ombudsman kind of highlights these systemic problems, doesn't it?
It really does. And the key thing is these aren't separate problems. Trouble with identity, finances, health, bureaucracy, they all bleed into each other. They amplify each other.
But the system treats them
They
separately.
often, yeah. Siloed support from different departments. It doesn't match the veterans' integrated, often overwhelming reality.
Let's dig deeper into those lasting tolls, the physical and mental health burdens.
Okay, the psychological cost. It's significant. We're talking maybe 1 in 5, even 1 in 4 Canadian veterans with a diagnosed mental health disorder.
Like, it's incredibly high.
It is. Recent surveys show much higher rates for vets than civilians. Anxiety disorders, mood disorders, and PTSD, over 16% for PTSD in veterans versus about 3% in the general population.
16%.
And suicide risk is higher. 1 in 5 vets have had suicidal thoughts. Moral injury, that am I a good man question, is a huge factor too. But despite the need, stigma and system barriers mean high treatment dropout rates.
And you mentioned earlier how physical and mental health are so linked for veterans.
Deeply. Veterans report fair or poor health more often than civilians, and chronic physical conditions are actually 3 to 4 times more common than diagnosed mental health issues.
Really? Like, what kind of physical conditions?
Top ones: back problems, arthritis, high blood pressure, obesity, all significantly more common. Chronic pain affects 30% of veterans, nearly 11% severely. And there's often a military culture of just pushing through pain.
Yeah.
Research links service directly to these issues. Army service to musculoskeletal and gut problems, deployment to musculoskeletal issues, and chronic pain.
And these burdens aren't the same for everyone, are they? Different groups have different experiences.
That's crucial. Women veterans, for example. Maybe less heart disease, but more osteoporosis, fibromyalgia, anxiety, mood disorders. Some actually report better health after leaving, escaping what they called a toxic work environment.
Wow, that says a lot.
It does. And Indigenous veterans, despite a long service tradition, face legacies of inequity. Historical stuff like the Soldier Settlement Act denied them equal benefits. But maybe the most critical finding overall is that profound comorbidity. Remember the 95% figure?
95% of vets with a mental health condition also have a chronic physical one.
Exactly. Mental health issues dramatically raise the odds of physical problems: musculoskeletal, respiratory, cardiovascular. It's a vicious cycle. Each makes the other worse.
Which means the healthcare system needs to adapt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not treat things in silos.
Absolutely. It demands integrated whole-person care. The current siloed systems just aren't set up for that reality.
So to meet these huge needs, there's this whole ecosystem of support in Canada.
There is. At the center is Veterans Affairs Canada, VAC. They handle benefits, pensions, health services like specialized clinics for operational stress injuries, transition support.
And how's that working?
It's mixed. Lots of vets use VAC. Satisfaction is okay overall. But those complaints about bureaucracy, delays, paperwork, they're persistent. The Veterans Ombudsman's Office exists for a reason. Then alongside VAC, you have a really active nonprofit sector. The Royal Canadian Legion is the biggest community aid, advocacy, social hubs. Wounded Warriors Canada focuses on mental health programs. True Patriot Love Foundation raises funds for various programs. Lots of others too.
So lots of organizations trying to help.
Definitely. But the big weakness, lack of cohesion. The system often feels like separate pillars: VAC, provincial healthcare, nonprofits, all doing their own thing. The veteran is often left trying to piece it all together.
So the burden of navigating this complex system falls on the veteran when they're often least able to handle it.
Exactly. Imagine needing VAC for benefits, provincial health for a specialist, a nonprofit for therapy, the Legion for peer support, each with its own process. It's overwhelming. Veterans consistently say they need help navigating it all, like a dedicated navigator or case manager. The system seems built around the providers, not the holistic needs of the veteran.
And the final hurdle, maybe the toughest for some, is public perception. How society sees them.
Yeah, and the media often gives a skewed picture. Coverage clusters around Remembrance Day, then veterans become kind of invisible. Honor and commemoration is the main story. But when challenges like PTSD are covered, over 60% of the time the focus is on danger, violence, and criminality. Think about the Lionel Desmond case, how that dominated
Right,
headlines.
it creates a really negative stereotype.
It does. The broken hero or even villain image, stories about successful reintegration, resilience, recovery, they're rare. Less than 10% of articles.
And that has real-world consequences.
Huge ones: stigma, social distance, discrimination from employers, landlords. It deepens that cultural gap, increases isolation. It's actually a public health issue.
So the antidote must be hearing directly from veterans themselves in all their complexity.
You got it. Amplifying authentic voices. Projects like VAC's Heroes Remember, the war museums in their own voices, the Atlas Institute's digital stories, they showcase real narratives. Recovery, moral injury, women vets, indigenous vets, their own words. Plus, memoirs, diaries.
Those personal stories show incredible resilience, don't they? Like Nick Grimshaw talking about fall down, stand up, dust off. Or
Yeah.
Josh finding sobriety. Diane, one of the first women in combat arms. Shauna finding healing through indigenous culture. That WWII pilot who just refused to worry about dying.
Exactly. We need more of those messy middle stories, not just heroes or villains. The media narrative shapes public opinion, fuels stigma. Changing that means amplifying diverse, authentic veteran voices.
So we've covered a lot of ground. From AI warfare, potential tech drafts, all the way back to the deep human costs and complex transitions for veterans today. What really seems to connect it all is that unwavering human element at the core of military service, past, present, and future.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, respecting those who serve can't just be passive remembrance. It has to be an active commitment. Understanding how service is changing, anticipating new burdens like the psychological weight of automated warfare, and fundamentally improving support for those who've already given so much. We need integrated, proactive care for the whole person, not just treating symptoms in isolation.
So thinking about all this, what does it mean for you listening? Given these huge shifts, the AI future, the enduring human costs we've discussed, what kind of covenant, what kind of promise does our society really need to make with all its service members? Those operating the drones and those navigating civilian life. How do we ensure we're not just remembering, but truly supporting their present and their future?